I was just thinking about how like I like to see. I feel like Urbit is still kind of coming out of its shell in the like in this in that like our ability or our we've never operated in the kind of traditional working in public like open source model. Not because anyone dislikes it necessarily, it just like didn't come naturally. Like there was, I think Urbit's so kind of counterintuitive, it's so unusual that it was like, um, if you were interested in it and you wanted to participate and kind of just hop on the network and join, like you were welcome to, but we weren't like very publicly evangelizing it. But as the group of collaborators grows, those habits like have to change and just like grow up a little bit. There's just like more people involved and more stuff happening. And I'm definitely like, I feel like there's I don't know if we've like figured out the right way to do that. Not that we have to necessarily reinvent it, but just that we like it's important to be more, it's not just like important, it's like high leverage for us to be more transparent and more open about what we're working on. But that's always counterbalanced with the fact that like we have so much stuff that we have to that we're trying to actually get done, that the work to also communicate about it is, I mean, it is work, um, which is,
Yeah.
anyway, keeps it from being communicated.
Yeah, it's always a trade-off, and it's a trade-off that's super sensitive to the specific things you're working on, the people who are working on things, the just everything about it, and obviously the broader state of the ecosystem. There was a long time when explaining things and talking about stuff in public just didn't have that much of a payoff. Like it was fun because you'd have one or two guys out there would think it would be cool, um, but that has changed obviously over the last several years, and even especially in the since the beginning of the year, you just see even more of the ecosystem becoming real and sort of increasingly serious, which has been really satisfying to see, where people are like, okay, not only do I think Urbit is cool and is trying to mess around with stuff, but I'm going to try to get down into the deepest layers of this. I'm going to try to solve the hardest problems. I'm going to try to take seriously, how can we make Urbit successful for the masses? How what can we do um with an application system like this? What are more prototyping, more trying to develop them into real products, and all of that kind of stuff is happening a lot more, and that greatly increases the value of just saying stuff in public. Some of it's, you're teaching them how to use certain things, but some of it's also just like recounting things we've thought about for a long time, and just I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I think the difference is that so much of that, like, so for, we're assuming that everyone knows, right? But it's like, yeah, I found this project in 2013. We first met in 2014.
2014 is when I joined Fawn.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we talked on the network
Yeah.
2013. Yeah.
Yeah, that's insane. But during that early period of time, like from 2013 to 2020, I feel like there there were the problems that were being worked on were like very ill-defined, or they weren't ill-defined, they were really hard open-ended problems, and you just like didn't actually want anyone's help with them. Was like the reality, right? It was like, look, it's really unlikely you're going to find anybody else who actually even really wants to work on this problem, and it may be that we already have the people here, plus we had like no money anyway, so what's the point of asking anyone
Well,
to help you?
and
Like,
specifically, you only like it wasn't that you didn't want help, didn't need help. It's that it was only really useful to have someone help if they were gonna spend their days on this. If it's
yeah,
something
yeah,
on the
yeah,
side,
yeah, it's not
then
like a
right,
passive, you
it
can't
needed to be
work on
someone
it for
who's
fun.
actually gonna take ownership of this in the same way that we were. And we found many
Right.
people like that eventually, and eventually got the money to hire them and so on. And yeah.
Right, but the way that we found them was often by actually not traditionally working in was like by doing the opposite of working in public. Something I was writing recently, I'll probably put it out next week, about how I feel like we basically just like we like left the front door open. Like we just like we did, technically we were working it, like everything was always open source. Like you could
Right.
go crawl the GitHub repo you could get on the network, but we didn't follow any of the patterns of working in public as it's sort of traditionally understood, right?
Right. Right.
Um, but then the thing that I've noticed, or the interesting thing about, yeah, seeing it seeing the whole ecosystem accelerate, it's like that happened like um, there were I can't pinpoint the moment at which all of a sudden people were able to do stuff on top of things that I didn't think were 100% finished, but like might be finished. Like there was no, I never had this recognition of like, oh yeah, we finished. Actually, Ames is fine. Like some of those Ames bugs, like there were Ames bugs that would like plague us for years, right? And you'd fix one, and we rewrite part of it, and you'd and like there was in fact a time, it's like now maybe you could go back and figure out when it was that we like fixed the last Ames bug, at which point then it became possible to really, I think, as an application programmer, and I don't think Ames is the only thing, but there was this moment where there were a confluence of bugs like that were fixed, so that when you would then build an app, you were not punished by the fact that there were other system bugs, right? You were like, oh, I can build
Yeah,
this thing, and if something is wrong with it, it's actually self-contained within my own code base, which as a programmer is so important. Like you can't actually build something if like the
right,
foundation is like falling out from underneath you. But
right.
I never had the recognition of that. We never had a moment where we're like, we did it. The system is pretty good. Um, and it's
Yeah,
like
but
good enough to
that
ask other
like that
people to
era
use.
I identify very specifically with basically 2018 to 2020, because during that period of time
Yeah,
you add real identities, right? We go on chain, which you know, yeah, which makes it possible for some of this stuff to be permanent. We add personal breaches, which is really important on the path toward full continuity.
yeah,
We get new aims, which I think that's basically when you end most of the one-way connectivity stuff. Like there's some bugs in the
yeah,
initial months of that, but that's was like the big turning point on that from my perspective. We also get forward fusion by the time you're in 2020. We also get the static gall and the
yeah,
threads interface. All of that shows up during that time. We also get the
yeah.
rewrite of air to be, very dumb the way it is
You have a
now.
better, you have a better memory of
And
this than I do. Yeah,
yeah, and so all that happened between 2018 and 2020, basically, or all that was released during that time. There's also
yeah,
important stuff in the runtime. That's when we got a hold of our
yeah,
memory issues, right? That's when we hooked up our mass again. We started getting rid of the memory leaks. We started doing things like defragmenting and meld and all those sorts of things. All that happened during
yeah,
that time. And then at the end of 2020, we do the last network breach.
yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah,
and then it's like, okay, now maybe there is something here that you can build on. And then Josh recognizes within just a few months of that, Josh is good at recognizing this kind of thing. Okay, now this is the moment when we need to build third-party software distribution
yeah,
because you can
yeah,
actually do
yeah.
it.
Right. This is
And that happens
so
that
I have
year.
a particular. Yeah, and but I am, like I have a well, I think it's both a like the way that I want to just like make stuff and have it be good and like not talk about it. But I also had spent so many years working on this thing where we had been in this cycle of like, all right, let's try and make something, see if it works, and then see how it breaks. And that's how we would like contribute to, we would go back and like work on the system itself. And so there was, I remember that being a momentous thing. Okay, we're going to breach the network. It's going to be the last breach. But I think from my perspective, I was like, like, well, yeah, we'll see
We
what
we
happens here.
we
Like,
avoided committing it to it being the last breach. We were like, we're breaching the network again. We'll call this
yeah,
I don't know, full continuity candidate or something like that. But
sure, yeah, yeah. I mean, there's nothing. I think I also just have this very personal, like, deep dislike of people overselling things that are not actually what they appear to be, and so I like have
yeah.
always never want us to do that. But I think in retrospect, I'm like, I think it wasn't until even like it was like sometime late last year. Remember, I think I was talking to Logan. We were talking about the runtime because I was like talked to Logan about the runtime a lot, or like it's a common topic of conversation. It's important to Logan. Uh, but he was like, honestly, like the kernel is basically fine. Like a lot of there's like a lot of challenges. The challenges really are in the runtime. And I remember thinking, fuck, he's right. Which and I was like, oh fuck, I'm like a year behind like believing that in some ways, because I have like my like bar for really committed true belief is like so insanely high. But I was like, okay, I guess it's actually past that